So your boss wants you to make a podcast. Should you? Should you be making a podcast? While we are potentially in like the next gold rush of podcasting, and it seems like a priority on everyone's mind, it may not necessarily be for everyone. And when you're assessing it as a tool, especially if it's been mandated, I've certainly had a couple of conversations with people over the last few months who are looking at podcasting in 2022. It's part of their mandate. What are the things that you need to consider is what I'm hoping to cover. So welcome back to the 4 a.m. report. Over the next few months, we're going to be presenting to you some podcasting lessons and potentially in micro format where you can use these episodes to business case, whether exactly a podcast could work for you. So that said, let's dive into the first episode today. Today, I wanted to talk about the first of the factors when it comes to podcasting or the benefits to be had. The first one is that it really should be up-leveling your content marketing. It should be adding a lot of content to your existing editorial calendars and your distribution, whether that is through social, through email, whether that is through your website as blogs, which is often, by the way, the place that many people fall down. Many people publish just once a month while you're also creating so much other content in podcast and video format. So the first thing you want to think about is content marketing. So people often tell you to create one piece of infrastructure. We call it an anchor, and then break it up into lots of other pieces. But that might well be easier said than done. So here we break it down for you in this episode on how you can take one larger piece of content like a podcast episode and then break it down into other things. And if this feels achievable for you as a team, then at the very least, it's worth thinking about podcasting for 6 months. So listen to Will Lamont and I walking through how to break down a piece of content from podcast into at least 10 pieces. Enjoy.
Welcome to the 4 a.m. report. On this podcast, we dish about fresh-pressed, fun marketing. If you're stressed out and awake at night again, wondering what to do, you found your joy. I'm your host, Susan Diaz, podcasting founder, humor junkie, observer of human behavior patterns, and mom. Each week, I'm joined by a different co-host to break down the latest headlines at the intersection of marketing and entertainment.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the 4 a.m. report. Will and Susan here. Surprise! Today we're going to talk about podcasting, right, Susan?
Yep, podcasting it is. And this episode is intended to be like a mini masterclass in podcasting, whether you're new and just starting on podcasting and looking to see how you can extend it beyond just the recording and anchor it. We like to call it anchor. Like we all know that podcasts are not going to give you like, okay, 200 people listen to it and one person hired us. You're not going to get those kind of numbers. What you will get is associated ROI that we call the Domino Effect.
Right, exactly. And it's basically that I call it the more emotionally intelligent way to measure the results of your podcast, because we talk numbers, but we're going to talk a lot of qualitative relationship building, network expanding, all of that stuff that the little numbers dashboard isn't going to just show you, but is so equally, as if not more important, we found on our way to getting business from our podcast. So we are going to talk about something we get asked about a lot, actually. We get asked about how we use our podcast in our own marketing. So we thought we'd do a quick little micro episode here on how we use our podcast that we record weekly and turn it into lots of content. Dare we even say we could come up with 10 ideas here on the spot, Susan?
I think so. I think you could easily come up with 10, but the idea is to make sure that people can also do that with practice, right? So let's get started. What is our typical podcast recording process? We get together like this, Will and I. Some episodes are just us and some episodes are with a guest.
for the one, regardless of what type of episode it is, we get a transcript. So that's like almost like 0.0. You have a recorded audio file, you get a transcript of some sort.
And that's when the magic starts to happen, isn't it, Susan?
Yes, it's quite awesome. So once we get the transcript, what do we do first, Will?
Okay, so we get the transcript, and our writer, she will take that and she creates a few different pieces of social copy, because you're not just putting out your podcast once. You want to put it out a few times, saying some different things about it, but it's all pulled from the transcript. Also, for your podcast, wherever it goes to live, we use Libsyn as the hosting platform. You write up show notes. Show notes often can be something like the social copy, but a little more in depth. Some people will also copy and paste chunks of the transcript as the show notes. So right there, Susan.
For a few reasons, sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
For a few reasons why people copy and paste the transcript. The transcript in itself, bear in mind, because it's artificially generated, is going to have a lot of error. Having said that, it is still an accessibility tool. For someone who isn't able to hear it, there's the option to read it, right? And search and find. So there's SEO abilities, there's accessibility attached to it. So that's right there, the transcript and the show notes.
Yeah, and we've already spoke about probably like right now, let's say we're at four pieces of content, a few different pieces of social copy, a transcript. If you do have a guest, you could always put a post out about the guest. Just pull their bio from wherever, mention that they're a guest. There we're at 5. So what else could we do with this transcript in the podcast, Susan?
The audio itself. So you have an audio file. You want to take that and use it to the best of your ability, regardless of what platform of hosting you choose. There's some ways in which you can snippet it out, even if you're DIYing it as a team. So think about audiograms. A couple of audiograms, at the minimum, one audiogram to just sort of either like a sneak preview on the episode, or a quick recap, or an in case you missed it. Ideally both. You want to think about different snippets of the podcast. Also, when you're snippeting up something like this, think about, even if people only listen to these 3 little audiograms, could they get the gist of it? Like the TLDR, too long, didn't read version of your podcast. So use those audiograms. I'd say 1 to 3 audiograms would be great. Over and above that, an email. Don't forget email. Like if you have a good list, people are coming with you for the journey, you definitely want to be thinking about email. Whether it's a roundup, and we'll go into that in a little bit on how to consolidate episodes, but in the next episode, we'll talk about that. But for now, if you would like to send out an email immediately after the podcast is released, or maybe just the show notes saying that if you don't want to listen to the whole episode, here's the gist of it. Email is certainly one.
I don't think we did mention the blog either. So each episode.
Yeah, so the actual blog.
With that transcript, writing a blog post becomes a lot easier.
Sure does.
Enter some context. You can even pull quotes that people said from the transcript. We also like to make our blogs kind of up the fun level a bit. We embrace the GIFs or the memes. It helps. It helps. Just make it a little more fun and something different. And also, it's great for SEO because every week we're putting up new blog content that came about quite easily. It's worth thinking about in terms of what level of evolved practice you want to put into the actual blogs that come from your podcast. At the very least, you want an intelligent human transcribed, something that reads decently well and hits on all the points. But then beyond that, how far you can take it, the sky's the limit, right? You can research associated topics. You can use it for cross-linking and roundups of your own episodes, as well as like other people's episodes that you could easily be linking in. So really stepping that up and practicing some of what we call the flywheel, or rather we subscribe to somebody's idea of the flywheel, and improving it constantly and trying to get to a higher level of blogging. So that's definitely something you want to think about. And Will, you touched on the memes and the GIFs and the sliders. That's a whole, like a separate pillar in itself. And you could make as many or as few as you want to, but don't dismiss the visual aspect. Pulling out a short snippet of your blog post and posting it along with a GIF, or, coming up with like an image that best represents it, using the lead image of the blog that you've posted on your website and having a little snippet under that. So really you could do a whole lot there.
again, on the evolution scale, if you want to get a little bit more advanced, I suppose you could go to sliders and carousels and various things like that. Let's talk about spinning it off. If you truly are an evolved creator of content and you have a team that can work fast on material, you could spin it off, right? Like we've done with Thirsty Thursday. Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah. Basically, Thirsty Thursday came about because, well, our podcast, 4 a.m. Report, goes out 4 a.m. on Thursday. And we wanted to embrace video. So we thought, let's do a 4 p.m. report after show. So 4 p.m. Thursday, where we kind of recap that week's podcast episode. It's evolved to be focused a lot more on, us talking about the news of the week, marketing, celebrity, pop culture, societal, all of that sort of stuff. And we started calling it more Thirsty Thursday than the 4 p.m. report after show. But our podcast still plays a role in that. We still do recap it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of been the bridge to a whole other property that we've created.
That's right. Yeah. And I think that's something we thought about a long while ago, but executing it as a standalone property would have proved to be hard. But utilizing some of the infrastructure we've built for the podcast has made that a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. So that right there, I think we probably exceeded the 10, but to recap it, the transcript on its own, in whatever form you can use it, show notes, 2 to 5 social posts, 1 to 3 audiograms, making sure that you're using graphics, GIFs, memes, put them in your blog post and then split them up for distribution. And then lastly, think about spinning it off into other properties that can live on their own.
Yeah. And don't forget, you can also do a post or 2 highlighting your guest.
Yes, a guest
using their headshot or a little clip from the thing as well. So there you go. There you have it.
Yes. And should we talk really quickly about how long something like that should take you in terms of timing? And I'd say that creating an anchor like that with all of the pieces in it shouldn't take you longer than 3 to 4 hours. Again, if you're an evolved practitioner and you've got all the systems in place. The biggest jobs at hand will be the blog post itself, like trying to take that transcript and turn it into intelligent writing. And then beyond that, you just want to get into the discipline of breaking it up. And
once you figure out the frameworks for these different pieces of writing, it becomes a lot easier. Because I used to do a lot of the writing for our podcast. And it took me a little while, but then I was like, okay, for social posts, I do this. For the blog, I'm going to start with this, always put this here, always this here. It became like a little, framework writing factory that I had set up for myself. But it did take a little time. Practice does make things easier and more efficient.
This is true.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're losing sleep over a marketing-related problem, let us know. Drop us a line at cp.digital. Sweet dreams. Well, hopefully.